Hello friends. If you decide to buy a ForFour, then it is better to look at gasoline engines. They are not from Mitsubishi, as some think, but from MMC Power, a joint venture between MMC, Smart, and Mercedes-Benz. Nevertheless, reliability and performance are in no way inferior to Mitsubishi Motors products. The base is a 1.1-liter 3-cylinder gasoline aspirated, equipped with a balancing shaft driven by a chain. It also combines with camshafts. Maximum power 75 horsepower achieved at 6,000 RPM and peak torque of 100 Nm at 4,000 RPM. Please note, in some markets, the performance of the motor has been reduced to 64 horsepower. The 3-cylinder engine drives well, partly due to the low curb weight of less than 1,000 kilograms. But it is better to choose a 4-cylinder engine. Even the smaller 1.3-liter literally inspires the car, while the larger 1.5 gives an almost sporty drive. Both engines are derived from the 1.1 by adding another cylinder, the diameter of which in all three units is 75 millimeters. The 1.3 has a shortened piston stroke from 84.8 millimeters to 75.4 millimeters. The 1.5 liter has the same stroke as the 1.1, 84.8 millimeters. The 4-cylinder aspirators use a reliable chain and variable valve timing system on the intake shaft, but the balance shaft is no longer here. Gasoline engines are reliable and durable. In a 3-cylinder engine, only ignition coils can disturb, one for each cylinder. If the coil fails, the control unit puts the engine into emergency mode, which continues to work on the remaining 2 cylinders. This avoids the destruction of the catalytic converter due to the ignition of unburned fuel. In a 1.3-liter unit, the throttle electronics sometimes fail. It is driven by an electric motor. The damper body is heated by coolant. 1.5 CDI OM639, 68 or 95 horsepower, is a specific motor that was intended exclusively for the Smart ForFour and the Mitsubishi Colt. You won't find it anywhere else. The biggest problem with the turbo diesel is a crack in the blockhead. This usually happens after 100 to 150,000 kilometers. Cracks occur in the bowels of the chambers of the cooling system. There is no access to them, so it is impossible to weld the cracks. The tendency to crack is due to several reasons. For example, there is no coolant temperature gauge. It was available as an option and stuck out from the center of the dash. Another reason is low power, especially the weakest modifications, 68 horsepower. In order to drive normally, the manufacturer had to make extremely short gears. Paradoxically, the turbo diesel works best paired with a 6-speed automated transmission. As a result, short gears of the mechanics force the diesel to turn. And whether the engine is warmed up, you do not know, since there is no temperature gauge. Thus, the motor, while still cold after a long stop, is under heavy load. It is unlikely that the typical owners of this car, especially women, even think about it a little and start moving in a gentle mode or warm the engine longer. The disadvantage further leads to another defect: premature wear of the piston rings. Getting a set of pistons with rings is quite difficult. Sometimes the engine is easier to replace. To complete the picture, it should be added that the 1.5 CDI turbo diesel has nothing to do with the 0.8 CDI OM660 of the small ForFour II, if you do not take into account the number of cylinders and the common rail injection system. The 0.8 CDI engine is the exact opposite of the 1.5 CDI. The small diesel is very robust and extremely reliable. It is able to walk more than 100,000 kilometers without intervention. All engines have a timing chain. In gasoline engines, with the exception of the 1.5 turbo, mechanical valve clearance adjustment is used. The clearance is checked after 100,000 kilometers. The diesel engine and the rare 1.5 turbo are equipped with hydraulic filters. The oil in the units must comply with the Mercedes-Benz MB229.1 standard and higher. The 3-cylinder engine was mated to GetRag's F5 MGA manual transmission as standard. For an additional fee, the more powerful versions were combined with the F6 Sga 6-speed automated transmission. It was designed specifically for this car and has nothing to do with the 6-speed for 2. There actually were only 3 gears, and the remaining 3 gears were provided by an additional gearbox. The F6 Sga box is slow and not smooth enough. An electric motor is responsible for changing gears, which is connected to the mechanism by a pair of actuators. One of them is responsible for the inclusion of 1st and 2nd gear, as well as 5th and 4th. The second for the 3rd and 4th, plus reverse. There is another electric motor that provides clutch control. Still, the F6 Sga should be avoided. Sometimes the thrust between the clutch motor and its control lever is destroyed, and the thrust is part of the motor. If this happens, the machine will be immobilized. The ForFour's running gear doesn't give much to complain about. In addition, it is identical to the Colt. In front, McPherson, and in the back, a torsion beam. Suspension parts are readily available and the choice is wide. Original parts provide for the replacement of ball and silent blocks along with the lever, but in the market these elements can be purchased separately. The wheel bearings of the front wheels in the original are assembled with a fist and a brake disc shield. However, as in the case of levers, you can purchase third-party components and replace the worn element separately. The anti-roll bar is only used on the front axle. There were 2 types of stabilizer. For the more powerful versions, it relied on long and thin rods, while for the basic versions, it relied on short ones. In rare cases, the power steering fails. The electric motor fails. The defect is bad. Corrosion protection is above average, which is why these cars look better than many of the younger models of some brands. ForFour's biggest problem is body parts, or rather their availability. There is almost nothing in the catalogs of well-known spare part suppliers. Headlights cost the same amount, and this is a rather sought-after product. Designer optics poorly illuminated the road even on a new car. And today, the ForFour is almost blind at night because almost everyone's reflector glasses turn yellow. In addition, the headlights use the least common combination of H7 bulbs, which are known to have a limited lifespan and high cost. Smart is simply full of electronics. However, you should not be afraid of this since failures in its work are a unique phenomenon, and the rare use of the rear wiper leads to souring of the mechanism. If you know of other model malfunctions, be sure to write about it.